On the day I gave the valedictorian speech, 6 chairs in the front row had my family's names taped to them. Every single one stayed empty. I can still see those stupid white pieces of paper in my mind. Reserved Patricia Morrison. Reserved Robert Morrison. Reserved Madison plus guest. Reserved Tyler. Little black letters, crooked from the tape, flapping a bit every time the arena doors opened and let a draft in. And me, standing at the podium in a cap 2 sizes too big, pretending I didn't keep glancing down at that empty row every 30 seconds, like some abandoned puppy. Don't cry, don't cry, don't you dare cry, I kept telling myself, while 2 giant screens on either side of the stage beamed my face to 10,000 people. Of course, it was the one time in my life I wished my parents weren't finally seeing me on a big screen. Joke was on me. They weren't there to see anything. When I'd walked into the arena an hour earlier with the other graduates, I was buzzing. My stomach was doing cartwheels, but the good kind, you know, where nervous and proud sort of melt together. The University of Delaware Marching Band was playing some dramatic arrangement of pomp and circumstance. Blue and gold banners were hanging from the rafters, and the whole place smelled like cheap perfume, hairspray, and that weird artificial popcorn scent big venues always have. I kept craning my neck, trying not to trip over my own gown as we shuffled down the aisle. I knew exactly where my family would be sitting. Row A, section 104. I'd texted them the night before. Hey, Mom, seats are section 104. Row A, numbers 3, 8. They'll be labeled Morrison. Ceremony starts at 10, but doors open at 8:30. Please don't be late. They're going to film the crowd when I speak, she replied with a thumbs up, and we'll be there, sweetheart. So proud of you. Don't stress. That don't stress hits different in hindsight, let me tell you. So I'm scanning the seats as the faculty leads us in, tassels swiping my face every few seconds, and my heart does this excited little jump when I spot the reserved signs. 6 in a neat row, just like I'd asked for. Only there are no actual Morrisons attached to those seats. Just a couple of stray programs and someone's half-drunk bottle of water. It's fine, I told myself. They're always late. They'll sneak in during the national anthem or whatever. I sat down with the other honor students on the floor, pretending I didn't feel that first cold little drop of dread slide down my spine. My best friend from the marketing program, Jess, leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" Yeah, I lied. My family's just being my family. Jess rolled her eyes sympathetically. They have one job today. One job. Show up. The university president started his long welcome speech. There were some jokes, some applause. I clapped when everyone clapped. I smiled when the cameras panned over the graduates. But the whole time, my eyes kept bouncing back to that row of seats like they were magnetized. Empty. Still empty. The nursing majors got called up first, then engineering, then business. Parents were cheering like they'd just won the lottery. Cowbells and air horns going off randomly across the arena. Every time somebody screamed for their kid, it felt like a tiny paper cut, a small sting, over and over and over again, until I honestly wondered if anyone else could hear how loud my silence was. By the time it was my turn to go up and give the valedictorian speech, the only people sitting in that reserved row were a middle-aged couple who'd apparently decided to ignore the signs and plop down anyway. The woman caught my eye as she settled a giant purse under her chair. She smiled this apologetic little smile, like she knew. I will never forget that look. A stranger sitting in my mother's seat, looking more sorry for me than anyone in my actual family ever had. Walking up to the microphone, I had this full blown out of body experience. I saw myself like a character in a movie. First generation college student, graduating summa cum laude, parents mysteriously missing. If I hadn't been actively trying to keep my knees from buckling, I might have laughed. My speech was about perseverance, about late nights in the library, about working part time and taking a full course load, about calling home from my dorm room freshman year and asking my mom if she was proud of me. Success doesn't happen in a vacuum, I'd written. It grows out of the love, support, and sacrifices of the people who show up for us when it matters. You know when words leave your mouth and you want to grab them midair and shove them back in? That entire line felt like that. I actually had to pause, swallow, and stare out over a sea of parents hugging cameras to their chests like life preservers. Support? Show up when it matters. Right. The crowd wasn't looking at my empty row. They were nodding along, some tearing up. From where they were sitting, I was that smiling girl on stage, polished and put together, thanking the invisible village that must have carried her here. They didn't see my phone buzzing in the pocket of my gown with the same notification over and over. Missed call, mom. Missed call, dad. New voicemail, 9:57. 9:58. 10:01. I'd silenced it when we lined up, trying to be present for this moment, which turned out to be the moment my own family ghosted me. By the time I left the stage, there were 300 photos of me on strangers' phones, a standing ovation, and 6 still empty chairs in row A, section 104. I managed to hold it together until I was back in my seat. Jess squeezed my hand. They'll be here for your name. Maybe they're stuck at security or something. This campus parking is hell. Yeah, I croaked. Probably. I didn't believe a word of it. They started reading names row by row. Each graduate walked across, shook hands, posed for their 1-second ceremony of recognition, then scanned the stands desperately for their people. There were shrieks, whistles, banners with embarrassing childhood photos. Dorene Elise Morrison, summa cum laude. The dean mispronounced my first name, as usual. Dorene, like I was someone's great aunt. I walked across that stage to polite applause and one lonely cheer from Jess's mom. Apparently, she decided to adopt me for the day. She screamed like she'd birthed me herself. When I turned to face the crowd for my photo, my eyes went straight to row A, section 104. On some level, I think I still believed, like some film cliche, they were going to burst through the doors at the last second. Waving, flustered, we made it. Nothing. Just that middle-aged couple. The woman watching me, with her lips pressed together, like she might cry on my behalf. Smile, I told my face. Big smile? You'll regret it forever if you look miserable in this photo. So I smiled. The flash went off. The photographer said, "Nailed it." And I walked off stage feeling like I'd been hollowed out with a spoon. After the ceremony, the arena turned into this chaotic hug fest. People in gowns trying to merge, with people holding bouquets and balloons. Everyone smelled like flowers and sweat and happiness. Cameras kept popping. "Mal! Sorry, Dorene," Jess called, barreling into me with her mom. "Can we get a photo?" We posed. Her mom kissed my cheek and said, "I recorded your whole speech. I'll send it to your parents." "Thanks," I managed, throat tightening. Where'd they end up sitting? We didn't see them. I I don't think they made it, I said. And if I looked anywhere near as broken as I felt, Jess's mom was polite enough not to show it. Oh, honey, she said softly, you did wonderfully. We were cheering extra loud for you, okay? I nodded, pretending my eyes were just watery from the bright arena lights. Once the crowd thinned, I checked my phone. 3 voicemails, 5 texts. None from Madison or Tyler. All from my mother. Voicemail 1, 9:53 a.m. Honey, we're leaving the house now. Dad had to run back in for his sunglasses. Don't worry, we'll be there. Break a leg. Oh, wait, that's for theater. Whatever. We love you. Voicemail 2, 10, 7 a.m. Traffic on I-95 is a nightmare. Why did they schedule this during beach season? Anyway, we might miss the start, but we'll be there for the important part. Love you. Important part. Voicemail 3, 10:34 a.m. Sweetie, we're okay. Don't freak out. Madison's not feeling well. She threw up in the car, and your father doesn't think it's a good idea to keep driving. We're going to turn around and get her in bed. We'll celebrate at home tonight, okay? We're so proud of you. Don't ruin this day being upset. Be mature. That last line. Don't ruin this day being upset. That's my mother. In one sentence. I didn't listen to the texts right away. I just walked back to my empty dorm room because I couldn't face going to the departmental reception and pretending Jess's mom was mine for the afternoon. I didn't want free cake. I didn't want politely curious professors asking, "Oh, where's your family?" I wanted my actual family in actual chairs. On the walk back, people kept stopping me. Great speech. Congrats. You did your family proud. I smiled, said thanks, lied through my teeth. When I finally collapsed on my twin bed, gown still on, cap tossed somewhere on the floor, I opened our family group chat. We have one called Morrison's, drama free, which is the funniest possible name in retrospect. I scrolled up. 8:02 a.m. me. Don't forget. Section 104, row A. Doors 8:30. I'm so excited to see you guys. 8:05 Mom, Patricia. We'll be there, sweetheart. Already arguing over who gets the best seat. Haha. And then, nothing. No explanation in the chat. No, we're so sorry, honey. Just my mom's separate text to me with the voicemails. Something felt wrong. Madison posts everything on Instagram. If she'd even sneezed that morning, it would have been in her story. No way she threw up in the car without at least a cryptic, ugh, my life post. I opened Instagram. My thumb hovered over her profile photo. Tongue out, peace sign, typical Madison. And then I tapped it. Her story was a blur of videos already. The first one hit me like a punch. 9:47 a.m. Madison filming herself in the passenger seat of my parents' SUV, sunglasses on, hair curled, grinning. Road trip with the fam, she sing-songs. Somebody is finally making it out of Delaware. She pans to my dad driving, my mom in the back seat with a cooler on her lap. Say hi to my followers, guys. Hi, followers, my mother squeals, absolutely not looking like the kind of woman about to deal with projectile vomit. Next clip. 10:15 a.m. They're pulling into not the university parking deck, a freaking amusement park 70 miles north. Bright red roller coaster tracks fill the background. There's a banner, Graduation Week, Special Congrats, Class of 20X. Madison zooms in on the banner and giggles. Look, we made it to graduation, guys. My dad laughs. This is way better than sitting in some hot stadium all day. You're so bad, my mom says, but she's laughing too. Don't post that. Your sister follows you. Relax. I'll block her for 24 hours, Madison says. Duh. Next clip. My brother Tyler, gangly and 17, holding a giant stuffed panda. For our favorite graduate, he says in this mock announcer voice. Sorry, not sorry, we stole you the better party. He bites into a giant funnel cake, powdered sugar all over his face. That was at 11 a.m., I know, because Instagram carefully timestamps everything. So yeah, Madison didn't throw up in the car. My parents didn't heroically turn back because their poor baby was sick. They just decided that cheap cotton candy and roller coasters were more appealing than sitting through my graduation. And they lied about it. I don't remember closing the app, but I remember my hands shaking so hard, my phone almost slid right out of them. You know that quiet, humming feeling when rage and heartbreak hit you at the exact same time. Like your body can't decide whether to scream or sob. So you just end up shaking and listening to your own heartbeat pound in your ears. I lay there in my ugly blue gown, staring at the cinder block wall, replaying their voices in my head. This is way better than sitting in some hot stadium all day. Me, their eldest daughter, first in the family to graduate from college. The hot stadium is where my life was about to open up, and they chose a drop tower instead. The first tear that finally broke loose landed on my honors cord and made this tiny, dark spot. That image is burned into my brain. I didn't call them, not right away. I knew if I called in that exact moment, I was either going to scream until my throat bled or break down so hard they'd say I was overreacting, which I'd heard enough times already for one lifetime. So I did the ugliest thing you can do after a life milestone. I took off my gown, alone, and hung it on the back of my closet door. It still had the tag on it. I'd told Mom not to worry about paying for it, that I'd cover it with my tutoring money. She'd said, well, if you insist, and Venmo'd me $10 for your hair or something. I grabbed my keys and left campus. I don't even remember the walk to my car. I drove home on autopilot. The whole way, their stupid Instagram videos kept replaying in my mind. Madison's carefree little, sorry not sorry, voiceover might as well have been a soundtrack to my entire childhood. By the time I pulled into our cracked concrete driveway in Wilmington, it was late afternoon. Their car wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. They were still out having the better party. The house looked weirdly small for somewhere that had contained so much of my life. The porch steps were warped in that way I'd never noticed growing up. The storm door squeaked the same way it had since I was 12. The front garden was full of those solar-powered lights my mother loved, half of them dead, the rest flickering weakly. I went inside, and the smell hit me. Our smell. Laundry detergent, old coffee, that faint lemon cleaner my mother swore by. For a second, my heart did that traitorous ache my brain couldn't stop. This was still home, technically. These were still my people, technically. Maybe there was some explanation. Maybe there wasn't. The dining table was bare, except for my high school senior portrait in a cracked frame and a stack of mail. No congratulations, graduate banner, no card, no flowers. There was a grocery store cake box on the counter, still closed, with congrats written in half-assed blue icing. No name, no candles, just congrats. I stood there staring at it until my vision went blurry around the edges again. At 6:13 p.m., the front door swung open. Laughter spilled in ahead of them, bright and careless. I heard Madison's voice first. I cannot believe you screamed like that on the Ferris wheel, Mom. It's like 10 feet off the ground. Shut up, Patricia laughed. You nearly peed your pants on the log flume. I did not. You screamed for Jesus, Tyler chimed in. I heard you. My dad's voice joined in, low and amused. I'm just glad they had that military discount. We saved like 40 bucks. Not bad for a spontaneous day trip. Spontaneous. Like my graduation was a rainstorm they had to suddenly dodge. They all froze when they saw me standing in the kitchen in my dress, and honor cords, mascara tracks on my cheeks. For a heartbeat, nobody said a word. The air went thick. Oh, my mom said finally, like she'd walked into the wrong movie theater. Honey, you're home already. Already, I repeated, my voice sounding nothing like mine. The ceremony ended 4 hours ago. We figured you'd be out with friends, she said, setting her purse down a little too forcefully. We left you a voicemail, sweetie. So, I said carefully, staring each of them down, you missed my entire graduation. On purpose. To go to an amusement park. We didn't miss the entire thing. My father cut in, defensive edge appearing in his voice like clockwork. We watched it on the live stream for a bit before we left. You sounded fine. Fine, I echoed. You watched me thank my support system on a university YouTube feed while you were packing a cooler. Madison rolled her eyes, slipping her phone into her back pocket. She still had her wristband from the park on. God, Dorene, you're being so dramatic. We talked about this, sitting in a stadium in the sun for 3 hours. For what? A piece of paper you already know you're getting? For what? I repeated, my voice shaking now. For me, for your daughter, for your sister, for the one thing I've worked my entire life for, that you've guilted me about every time I couldn't come home on a weekend because I was studying. Mom sighed, pressing her fingers to her temples, like she was the one suffering. We are proud of you. You know that. But with Madison leaving for her cosmetology program next month, and Tyler working, we thought it might be nice to get one fun family day in before everyone's schedules go crazy. One fun family day, I said flatly, and my graduation wasn't included under fun family? You're twisting my words, she snapped. There it was, that particular tone that said she was slipping from guilty to irritated. Am I? I asked quieter this time. I turned to Tyler. Did you know they were planning this? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom said, you'd understand, he muttered. She said you didn't even want a big fuss. I let out a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. Right. Because, God forbid anything be a big fuss about me. Madison crossed her arms. You always make everything about you, Dorene. It's exhausting. 4 years of, I can't go to the beach. I have to study. I can't come to game night. I have a paper. You got your day. We got ours. Win-win. My day was alone, I said. Your day was a roller coaster. Those are not the same. That's not fair, Mom snapped. We were going to celebrate tonight. Look. She gestured at the anonymous cake on the counter. I got your favorite flavor. Red velvet. You didn't even bother to put my name on it, I heard myself say. It just says, congrats. They spelled it wrong when I ordered it. She said too quickly. I told them to scrape it off. I didn't want you to feel disrespected. I barked out a short, disbelieving laugh. Oh, that ship has sailed. Dad slammed the fridge a little harder than necessary. Okay, Enough. You're not 12. You're a grown woman now. Sometimes life doesn't revolve around you. Be grateful you got to graduate at all. Not everyone gets that chance. You know when someone says something that's technically true, but the way they say it makes you feel like every sacrifice you've ever made just got tossed in the trash. That. Yeah, I said quietly. Not everyone gets that chance, but I did. And somehow, my own family couldn't be bothered to sit in a chair for 2 hours during it. We watched the important part, Mom insisted. We heard your name, I cried. There. Is that what you wanted to hear? What I wanted, I said, my chest tight enough that it hurt to breathe, was to look up from that stage and see you. Just see you. That's it. Instead, I saw two random strangers sitting in your seats. A weird silence fell. Even Madison didn't have a comeback for that. My phone buzzed on the counter. Jess, my mom posted the video of your speech. You were amazing. Sending the link to your mom. I stared at the message and then at my own mother, who was avoiding my gaze so hard I thought she might snap her neck. Then it hit me in a cold, clear way. This wasn't a one-off screw-up. This was the grand finale of something they'd been doing my whole life. You know how, when something huge happens, your brain does that weird flickering slideshow of memories? Little scenes started popping up. When I was 8 and won the spelling bee, Mom had forgotten what time it was and showed up halfway through, just in time to see Madison sing a solo at her elementary school concert. It's just spelling, Dorene, she'd said when I cried in the car. Madison's performance was scheduled months in advance. When I got into the advanced program in middle school, Dad told everyone at church, she thinks she's too good for regular math now, while ruffling my hair hard enough to hurt. Everyone laughed. Don't get too big a head, Dorene, one of the ladies teased. When I was named valedictorian in high school, Madison forgot to tell my parents the ceremony time had changed. They missed my speech, but arrived right in time for the reception, where Dad took over and told the principal, we didn't want to make a big hoopla. It's just high school. Just, 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 the word that had shrunk my entire life. Back in that kitchen, something inside me cracked and slid into a new shape. I need to grab my stuff from my room, I said, my voice suddenly calm in a way that scared even me. I'm going back to campus tonight. My lease is good until the end of the month. We can talk when you're ready to apologize. Apologize? Mom sputtered. Dorene, don't be ridiculous. We're not the bad guys here. I know you don't think you are. I cut in. That's part of the problem. I turned and walked down the hallway. My high school photos watched me from the walls, smiling with braces and bad bangs. In none of those frames was there a picture of me holding any of the awards I'd earned. Those all lived in a shoebox in my closet. In my room, my honors cords were tangled on the bed. I picked them up and actually hesitated, fingers squeezing the silky fabric. Part of me wanted to leave them there on my pillow, like some sort of symbolic, here, you clearly don't care about this, so take it. But those cords weren't for them. I'd earned them. I shoved them into my duffel instead, along with my laptop, a few changes of clothes, and the photo of baby me that my grandma in Pennsylvania had sent. It was the only framed picture in the house that had "So proud of our Dorene" written on the back in her shaky handwriting. As I zipped the bag, I heard my parents' voices drifting down the hall. She is overreacting, my mom hissed. I knew she'd make this into some big drama. We can't coddle her forever, Dad replied. She's got to learn The world doesn't revolve around her GPA. And what exactly were we supposed to do? Tell Madison we're canceling her surprise day because Big Sister wants applause. You saw how excited she was. She's been so down since Tommy broke up with her. She needed this. Ah, there it was. Madison needed it more. She always did. It's wild. The way your brain can rearrange your whole life in a single afternoon. For 22 years, I'd bent myself into weird shapes to make my family more comfortable, less intimidated, less left out, less threatened. I downplayed my test scores, pretended my scholarship offers weren't that big of a deal, turned down internships in other states because Mom couldn't bear the thought of me being so far away. In that moment, suitcase in hand, mascara streaked, my brand new degree still warm from the printer, I realized something so simple it felt like sacrilege. They were never going to be proud of me the way I needed them to be. Not because I wasn't worthy of it, because they were not capable of it. That night, back in my dorm, I did something I never thought I'd do. I Googled what to do when your parents are emotionally abusive but think they're perfect. That rabbit hole led me to terms like scapegoat child, golden child, narcissistic family, systems, and my personal favorite, flying monkeys. Whole blogs and YouTube channels dedicated to women describing my life in eerie detail. Mothers who sabotaged, fathers who minimized, siblings who were allowed to be messy and loud, and adored while the good kid was used as a prop and then punished for existing as more than that. I stayed up until 4 in the morning just reading. It was like someone had turned the lights on in a room I hadn't realized I was sitting in the dark in. 2 days later, after one half-hearted phone call from my mother, where she told me I'd really hurt your sister's feelings by not coming out to cut the cake, I booked a one-way ticket to Portland, Oregon. Why Portland? Honestly, because one night, in the middle of a YouTube binge, a vlog popped up of some girl walking over a bridge with the city skyline and all this green everywhere. It looked like the opposite of everything I'd ever known. Wide, open, soft. Also, because of Carmen. I'd met Carmen Rodriguez in a Facebook group for first-gen college students my sophomore year. She was a few years older, a teacher in Oregon, and we'd bonded over late-night rant posts about family expectations. She'd casually commented one night, "If you ever need to run away to the Pacific Northwest, my couch has your name on it." Haha. At 3 in the morning, fresh off my graduation disaster, I DM'd her. "Does your couch offer still stand?" She replied in about 30 seconds. "Oh, what happened?" Also, yes. I told her the short version. She responded with about 15 angry face emojis and, "Girl, pack your bag." So I did. I didn't tell my family I was leaving. I know some people will hear that and think, too extreme. Maybe it was. But here's the thing. When you spend your whole life being told you're overreacting to pain, you start to downplay the survival instincts that might actually save you. I left a note on the kitchen table the night before my flight. It said, "I'm safe. I graduated. I'm moving to Oregon. Please don't contact me until you're ready to take responsibility for how you've treated me. I love you, but I love myself enough to need distance." Dorene. It was the bravest and most terrifying paragraph I've ever written. When the plane took off from Philadelphia, lifting above the patchwork of suburbs and strip malls, my chest ached so hard I could barely breathe. I pressed my forehead to the window and watched the Delaware River shrink to a thin, shiny thread. "I'm really doing this," I whispered. No one heard me over the engines. Oregon greeted me with drizzle and the smell of wet pine. Portland felt like a movie set at first. There were food trucks on every corner, people on bikes who looked like they had PhDs in both coffee and beard maintenance, murals on the sides of what I'd grown up calling plain brick buildings. Carmen met me at the airport with a cardboard sign that said, "Runaway door," and a hug so tight I thought my ribs would snap. "You're taller than I pictured," was the first thing she said. "You're real," I said, half laughing, half crying. Her apartment was small and bright, with plants in every window and a cat who decided I was okay within 10 seconds. We stayed up that whole first night on her mismatched couch cushions, trading stories. Hers about a Mexican American family who thought moving 2 states away for college was abandoning your mother. Mine about a family who thought a B+ was a crisis, but skipping graduations was fine. Sometime around 3 a.m., she said, "You know, you're not crazy, right?" I'd heard that phrase from my mom before, but in a very different tone. "I feel like I am," I admitted. "They keep telling me I'm dramatic. Maybe I am. I mean, who moves across the country over a missed ceremony?" Carmen looked me dead in the eye. "You didn't move because of one ceremony. You moved because that ceremony was the last brick on a pile they've been building on your chest since you were a kid. You finally couldn't breathe. That was it. That was exactly it." Within a month, I'd found a job at a little boutique marketing agency that specialized in local businesses. Nothing glamorous, lots of social media for yoga studios and dentists, but it was a foot in the door. My boss, Jennifer, was this 40-something whirlwind who wore red lipstick every day and said things like, "We like smart girls around here. They make us money." On my second week, she called me into her office. I braced for criticism, because that's what 22 years of Morrison feedback had trained me to do. Instead, she said, "That copy you wrote for the food bank campaign, we've never had that much engagement on a post. People were actually crying in the comments, in a good way. I want you to lead the next campaign." I blinked. "Me?" She laughed. "Yes, you. Why do you sound so surprised?" "Because I'm brand new?" I managed. "Yeah, and?" She leaned back. "Listen, Mallory. Sorry, Dorene. I keep forgetting. Heart pounding. I've been meaning to talk to you about that." A week earlier, sitting in the Multnomah County Courthouse with Carmen, I'd signed a stack of papers and legally stopped being Doreen Elise. The clerk called my case number. I stood in front of a judge who looked more like someone's grandma than a terrifying authority figure, and I said, "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to change my name." "Any particular reason?" she asked, glancing over her glasses. I thought about saying, "Because my parents only ever said my name when they were disappointed or introducing me as their resume." Instead, I said, "I'm starting over. I want a name that feels like mine." She smiled. Good enough reason for me. So now, sitting in my boss's office, I took a deep breath. "I actually go by Mallory now," I said. "I filed the paperwork. New social, new ID, everything. It's a long story, but I'd really appreciate it if the office could update it." Jennifer studied me for a second, then nodded. "Mallory," she repeated, like she was tasting it. "That suits you. Email HR. We'll update payroll. Welcome to your new life, kid. Welcome to your new life." I walked back to my desk, floating. It's weird, right? How something as simple as hearing your name said without an edge can feel like someone turned off a background noise you didn't even know was there. Mallory. In the Morrison house, Dorene was mostly used in two tones: exasperation, Dorene, honestly, or bragging. This is our Dorene. She got a full scholarship. Can you believe it? There was this constant whiplash of, you're too much, and be our trophy. Mallory felt neutral at first. Then it started to feel warm. My friends said it with affection, my boss with respect, strangers with no history attached. I'd introduced myself freshly, and people met me right there, not weighing me down with 22 years of baggage. I kept my last name, Morrison, partly because I didn't have the energy to change absolutely everything at once, but also because some stubborn part of me wanted to reclaim it, to be the Morrison who didn't shrink to make everyone else more comfortable. Those first few months in Portland were messy and magical. I was broke, constantly tired, and weirdly happy. Carmen and I would sit on the balcony of her building, wrapped in blankets, drinking cheap wine, and watching the rain turn the streetlights into smears of gold. We talked about everything: work drama, book recommendations, the weird way our mothers both used the word ungrateful like a weapon. I started therapy, real, consistent therapy. My health insurance from the agency covered part of it, which felt like some kind of cosmic apology letter from the universe. My therapist, Andrea, was a soft-spoken Black woman in her 50s who wore statement earrings and had absolutely no problem calling me out gently. The first time I described the graduation incident, she listened quietly, then said, "And what message did you take from their choice that day?" "That I don't matter," I answered automatically. "And is that true?" Some part of me wanted to say yes. It was such an old script, but I was starting to see little cracks in it. The coworkers who valued my input. Carmen saving me the last slice of pizza because she knew I'd be late. The random YouTube comments on a silly video essay I'd made, saying my voice was so calming and they loved the way you tell stories. I shrugged. I don't know. It feels true. That's different, I guess. She nodded. Feels true because it's familiar, not because it's reality. Slowly, session by session, I began to pull my life apart, like tangled necklaces, figuring out which chain belonged to which belief, which knot was mine, and which one had been tightened by my mother's guilt trips or my father's sarcasm. About 6 months into my new life, I did something that would end up changing everything. I told my story on the internet. It started as a ranty little Tumblr post. Yeah, I know, Tumblr. I'm a millennial, don't judge me. I titled it, "To the Girl Whose Family Skipped Her Graduation," and just poured. The spelling bee, the high school ceremony, the college betrayal, the way I'd sat in that arena, pretending my chest wasn't collapsing in on itself. I ended it with, "If your family doesn't show up for your big moments, go anyway. Take up the space you earned. You deserve witnesses, even if they're strangers in a crowd." I tagged it #firstgengrad and #toxicfamilies and went to bed. The next morning, my phone had about 50 notifications, reblogs, messages, comments. Were we raised by the same mother? Ouch. I felt every word of this. I thought I was crazy for being mad my parents didn't come to my nursing pinning. Thank you for validating me. Do you have a YouTube? I could listen to you talk forever. I didn't at that point, but the idea lodged itself in my brain. I was working at a marketing agency. I knew how to grow a brand. I just accidentally hit a nerve. Carmen and I were at her tiny IKEA kitchen table that night, eating takeout Thai, when I said, "What if I did start a channel?" She grinned. "Where you talk about your mom for an hour every week?" "I'd subscribe." "Not just my mom," I laughed. "About this. About being the good girl in a family that resents you for it. About leaving. About all of it." "You could call it Revenge Diary," she said, half joking. Like, not revenge as in, "I'm gonna burn your house down," but revenge as in, "I'm living well in spite of you." I stared at her. That's actually perfect. 2 weeks later, I uploaded my first video. I filmed it on Carmen's old DSLR, propped on a stack of cookbooks, with a string of fairy lights behind me and my cat wandering in and out of frame. My hair was in a messy bun. I had on a thrifted sweatshirt that said, "Nevertheless, she persisted." "Hey," I said awkwardly into the camera. I'm Mallory. Welcome to Revenge Diary, I guess." I laughed, cheeks burning, even though no one was watching yet. This is where I talk about what it's like to grow up being the responsible one in a family that still manages to make you feel like you're always doing it wrong. So if your mom thinks every boundary is an act of war, or your siblings resent you for existing, you might feel at home here. The video was just me, telling my graduation story, with more detail and more cussing. I cried. I laughed. I made fun of my own shaky eyeliner. I said, "Seriously? If your family chooses funnel cake over your diploma, you are allowed to be hurt." And looked right into the camera like I was speaking directly to the me who had cried on that dorm room bed. It got 400 views in a week, then 2,000, then 20. Comments flooded in. This hit me in my soul. I thought I was being dramatic about my parents missing my ceremony. Thank you for this. Please make this a series. We need you. Every Sunday, I uploaded a new revenge diary. Each one was a chapter, the time my mom read my diary and grounded me for my thoughts. How my dad turned every achievement into a joke. Golden child versus scapegoat siblings 101. I kept names and specific details vague because despite everything, some part of me still didn't want to publicly drag my family. But the emotional truth, that I told. And people resonated. Hard. Women from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, all over, poured into my comments section. "You're literally telling my story. I feel less crazy listening to you. I played this for my therapist." My subscriber count crept from hundreds to thousands, then tens of thousands. A small ad check showed up in my AdSense. I donated the first one to a local domestic violence center and filmed a whole video sobbing about how wild it felt to turn pain into something that might help someone else. At work, I was quietly climbing ladders too. Jennifer kept giving me bigger accounts. "You just get people," she said once, tossing me the file for a mental health nonprofit. "You understand how to talk to them without sounding like a Hallmark card. Use that." It all felt almost too good. Like any minute, the universe was going to go, "Okay, Mallory, fun experiment, but back in the box now." The box showed up in the form of a Facebook message from a girl I hadn't thought about in years. "Hey, is this you?" she wrote, attaching a screenshot of my channel. The screenshot was from Reddit. Someone had posted my "family skipped my graduation" video in a thread called "Anyone else's parents just not show up?" It had gone minorly viral. Underneath, some anonymous comment said, This sounds a lot like this girl I went to high school with in Delaware. Her parents were always bragging about her, but also kind of awful. If it is you, Dorene, I see you. My stomach dropped. I'd worked so hard to create this boundary between Doreen the Morrison and Mallory the storyteller. And now the internet was casually stitching that seam back together. I sat on the edge of my bed, the cat head butting my leg, and did what I tend to do in a crisis. I called Carmen. They're going to find it, I said as soon as she picked up. My family, they're going to see all of it. She was quiet for a beat. Okay, she said. And, I repeated, like she was insane. And my mother is going to spontaneously combust and take out the tri state area, Carmen. She'll say I humiliated her, that I'm lying, that I've betrayed the family. She might actually die of martyrdom. Mallory, Carmen's voice softened. I love you, but they already think you betrayed the family. You could be lying on a beach somewhere, doing nothing, and they'd still be telling people you abandoned them. At least this way, you get to tell your own story, in your own words. She wasn't wrong. Still, when the call finally came, I felt like my heart was going to claw its way out of my throat. The number popped up on my screen as home, because I'd never changed that contact. For a second, I hovered over decline. Then, stupidly, I hit accept. Hello, Doreen? My mother's voice, flat as steel. She'd found me. It's Mallory, I said automatically. Oh, for God's sake, she snapped. Do you have any idea what you've done? She didn't even say hello. That hurt more than it should have. I swallowed. I assume you mean the videos? You assume right, she said. Madison saw them. One of her friends sent her a link, laughing, saying, Is this about your family? She's humiliated. Your father is furious. You've aired our private business for strangers on the internet to gawk at. Our private business. As if my pain was just some messy laundry pile she hadn't expected me to drag out onto the front lawn. I didn't use names, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. No one knows it's you. We know, she hissed, and people here know. The neighbors are asking questions. Mrs. Peterson called this morning to say your story broke her heart. What story, Doreen? The one where we are apparently such monsters that we left you abandoned and sobbing on your graduation day? You did leave me alone on my graduation day, I said quietly. That's not a story. That's a fact. We had our reasons, she snapped. You've twisted everything to make us look like villains. Do you know how that feels as a mother? I closed my eyes. Do you know how it feels, as a daughter, to have your mother choose a roller coaster over your diploma and then tell you you're overreacting? Silence, just her breathing, sharp and angry. You've always had a flair for exaggeration, she said finally. Your therapist is obviously putting ideas in your head. Narcissistic abuse? Really, Doreen? Do you even hear yourself? We gave you everything we could. We sacrificed for you. And this is our reward? Some YouTube freak show where strangers call me a toxic womb donor? That line should have been funny. It wasn't. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. I'm doing it to heal me and to help other people who have gone through the same things. I'm careful with my words. I've never said your name. How considerate, she spat. You think hiding behind a fake name and a different haircut makes this okay? You are destroying this family's reputation. There it was. Not, "You're hurting me." Not, "I'm sorry you felt so alone." Our reputation. "Mom," I said, surprising even myself with how calm I sounded. "You are doing a pretty good job of that without my help." What's that supposed to mean? I thought about the graduation, about the decades before it, about the neighbors who'd seen my parents leave in their matching school colors that morning and watch them drive the opposite direction. Instead of saying, all of that, I took a breath. It means I'm not responsible for how people see you when I tell the truth about how you treated me. If you don't like the story, maybe you should have behaved differently. You ungrateful little. She cut herself off. You listen to me. Take those videos down. All of them. Or I will. You'll what? I asked. Disown me? Tell people I abandoned you? You already did that. She snapped her mouth shut. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to find a new lever that might still work on me. Guilt, money, fear. Finally, she found it. Your grandmother is sick, she said, suddenly switching to this wounded, small tone. She's been asking about you. How am I supposed to tell her that her granddaughter prefers internet strangers to her own flesh and blood? The old me would have crumpled right then. But that day, I heard the manipulation so clearly, it was like she'd said it in neon. You can tell her I love her, I said. You can also tell her that I won't speak to you until you can acknowledge how much you've hurt me, without but or if. You are sick, she whispered. That therapist has poisoned you against your family. Family is everything, Dorene. When those YouTube people are done with you, who will you have? I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. More than I had when I was living in your house. And I hung up. I'm not going to lie and say I felt instantly free. I cried ugly for an hour afterward. My inner child was basically curled up in a corner, screaming, "You're going to die alone, and it's all your fault." But outside of that, in the grown-up part of my brain Andrea had been carefully helping me build, I felt relief. Like I'd finally stopped trying to plug a leaking dam with Band-Aids. If this were a revenge movie, this is where I'd say, my channel blew up overnight, and my parents had to watch my name on billboards. Real life was slower than that. But it did grow. My story on Reddit got shared in a BuzzFeed article about estranged kids, then in a podcast about toxic families. Revenge Diary hit 100K subscribers, then 200K. Brands started emailing me. Could I mention their online therapy app, their journaling service, their weighted blankets? I said yes to a few that actually made sense, and no to the weird ones. Hi, will you promote our teeth whitening kit in your video about parental neglect? Hard pass. I wasn't just the girl whose family skipped her graduation anymore. I was someone women trusted with their own stories. They poured them into my DMs at 3 a.m. Tales of moms reading texts, dads sabotaging driver's license tests, siblings copying applications, and then mocking them when they got rejected. I read every message. I cried with some of them on Patreon-only live chats. I started saying, I am not a therapist, just a girl with a messy family and a camera. Please find a licensed professional at the start of every video. Meanwhile, my actual birth family responded exactly how you'd expect. Madison posted a dozen vague Facebook statuses about snakes biting the hand that fed them and clout-chasing losers inventing drama for attention. Tyler sent me a shaky text. One night, Mom's been crying for days. Dad says you edited that video to make them look worse. I don't know what to think. I miss you. I stared at his message for a long time, then typed back, You were there, Ty. You saw the empty chairs. You know I didn't make that part up. After a long pause, he wrote, Yeah. Then, I'm sorry. It was the first apology anyone in my family had ever sent me. That wasn't followed by a but. We started talking more after that. Slowly, carefully, he told me about senior year, about how Madison had pretty much taken over my old room, about how Mom couldn't say my new name without this dramatic eye roll. Do you watch my videos? I asked once. He hesitated. Sometimes, he admitted, Mom says they're lies, but they sound true, if that makes sense. It does, I said. 2 years after I moved to Portland, I met Marcus. It wasn't at some glamorous event. It was at a food truck pod, in the rain, because of course, I was juggling a basket of tacos and my camera bag when someone bumped into me. My salsa went flying. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, a voice blurted. I looked up, ready to do my usual, It's fine, I'm fine, and then froze. He was annoyingly attractive, like curly dark hair, kind brown eyes, blue rain jacket, the whole Portland Honoree catalog cover starter pack. I killed your taco, he said, staring at the mess on my shoe. Wow, first impressions are not my thing. I laughed despite myself. It's okay. I probably didn't need all that cheese anyway. He insisted on buying me a replacement. We ended up sharing a picnic table under the leaky tarp, huddled over our food like we were in some weird survival show. I'm Marcus, he said, offering a salsa-stained hand. I design public transit stuff. You know, bus routes and ugly but necessary shelters. Mallory, I said. I make sad girls on the internet feel less alone. He laughed. That is possibly the most Portland job description I've ever heard. We talked until the rain turned from a downpour to that faint mist that makes everything feel like it's glowing. Somehow, in the space of an hour, we covered childhood pets, our favorite breakfasts, and whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It does. Fight me. I didn't tell him the full horror show about my family on the first date. I've learned not to trauma dump on people over guacamole. But over time, piece by piece, it came out. One night, we were on his couch, Netflix, asking, Are you still watching? Like some judgmental aunt. When he said, So, your parents really skipped your graduation to go to a theme park? Yep, I said, popping the pea. Half off funnel cakes wait for no woman. He shook his head. That blows my mind. When my sister graduated from community college, my parents rented a freaking hall and made a whole Filipino feast. They wouldn't stop taking pictures. She was mortified. See, that's what I thought it was going to be like, I admitted. Not necessarily the hall, but the pictures, the pride, some version of, we see you. I got a grocery store cake with no name on it. He reached over and took my hand. For what it's worth, if I'd known you then, I'd have been in the front row with a giant, embarrassing poster, he said. Maybe a blow-up of your baby picture or something. I laughed, a little choked. I would have hated you and loved you at the same time. Perfect, he grinned. That's my ideal relationship dynamic. It sounds small, right? Joking about posters and blow-ups. But in that moment, something rewrote itself inside me. Here was a man who heard my story, who didn't minimize it or turn it into some inspirational, teachable moment about forgiveness. And his first instinct was, I would have been there, not out of obligation, out of love. We moved in together a year later into a slightly crooked craftsman in southeast Portland that smelled like cedar and old paint. We painted the bedroom a soft green. We argued over where to put the couch. We bought way too many mugs. Sometimes I'd come home from a long day at the agency and a filming session to find a post-it on my microphone. Proud of you, Mallory. M. It seems cheesy, but when you grow up having your achievements hidden or mocked, a sticky note can feel like a trophy. On the third anniversary of my graduation, that wasn't. My channel hit 500,000 subscribers. I filmed a special episode titled What I Would Say to My Younger Self Outside That Arena and cried my eyeliner clean off. At the end, impulsively I added, if anyone else out there has ever had to distance themselves from their own family just to breathe, I see you. You're not a monster. You're not ungrateful. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is remove yourself from the fire, even if you're the only one who admits the house is burning. The video blew up. I got emails from talk shows. One of them actually flew me to New York to sit on a couch and talk about the epidemic of adult children going no contact. I was terrified my mother would see it and spontaneously appear in the studio to shout lies, like some reality show villain. She didn't, but she did send an email. The subject line was, "You win." I almost didn't open it. Curiosity got me. It was long. Pages of how I'd humiliated them, how neighbors at church whispered, how Madison couldn't date because everyone thinks our family is crazy now thanks to you. Buried in the middle, almost like it had slipped out against her will, was one sentence that made me stop and blink. I still don't think we did anything that bad, she wrote, but I'm sorry you feel that way. But for Patricia, anything containing the word sorry, directed even sideways at me, might as well have been a full confession. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I hit archive. Andrea had once told me, you don't have to drink every cup of guilt tea someone offers you. That email was an entire teapot. I left it on the tray. Instead of replying, I put my energy somewhere better. One afternoon, I was scrolling through my DMs and noticed a pattern. A lot of young women, like 19, 20, 21, were asking the same kind of question. I want to move out, but I have no money. My mom opens my mail, so I missed a scholarship deadline. I got into a grad program in another state, and my dad said he'll cut me off if I go. It hit me that not everyone could just hop on a plane like I did. They had financial chains wrapped around them, as tight as the emotional ones. This isn't fair, I ranted to Marcus one night, waving my phone. They're stuck because rent is insane and their families know it. They're using money as a leash. He nodded. So, what can you do with that anger and your audience and your marketing brain? That's how the First Flight Fund was born. I announced it in a teary video, a small grant program funded partly by my ad revenue and Patreon, and partly by a brand partnership I'd negotiated myself. $1,000 to help a young woman leave a truly toxic home situation. First month's rent, deposit, whatever she needed. We vetted applications carefully. We required they work with a counselor or advocate. I didn't want to just toss kids into apartments with no support system. The first time we wired money to a 20-year-old in Ohio so she could secure a room in a shared house near her job, I sat there watching the confirmation email, sobbing into my cat's fur. I feel like I'm helping younger me get on that plane, I told Andrea the next session. She smiled. That's not revenge, she said. That's redemption. Word of the fund somehow filtered back to my hometown. Tyler told me on one of our calls that a girl from his class had applied. Mom is furious, he said. She says you're rewarding disobedience. The pastor actually gave a whole sermon last week about honoring your father and mother. Everyone knew it was about you. Of course. They did, I said, rolling my eyes. How does that make you feel? He asked, cautious. Honestly, it made me feel weirdly powerful. For so long, the only power I'd had in that system was to play my assigned role or quietly rebel in little ways. Now, whole sermons were being preached because I existed outside of their script. I feel like I finally chose a different story, I said. They can keep telling theirs. I don't have to act in it. Years passed. Revenge Diary became my full-time job. The agency turned me into a contractor, so I could come in only for the projects I loved. I wrote a book, half memoir, half guide, for daughters of difficult mothers. It hit a bestseller list I'd printed out as a joke vision board goal year before. And then, one crisp October afternoon, Marcus took me to our favorite overlook in Forest Park and, with his hands shaking adorably, asked me to marry him. I said, obviously, afterward, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the ring catching little rainbows from the lamp. My brain did this weird thing where it zoomed right past wedding colors and dress styles to one single anxious question. Am I inviting my family? I told Marcus. He didn't pressure either way. It's your call, he said. I'll back you. I made a pro-con list because I'm that person. The pros column was mostly guilt. Grandma might be hurt. What if they've changed? The cons column was full of actual memories. The graduation, the voicemail, the cake, the videos calling me a liar, the email saying you win. In the end, I sent one invitation back to Delaware, addressed to Tyler. Plus, whoever supports Mallory being happy, I wrote on the RSVSP card, half joking, half dead serious. He called me 3 days later, voice thick. I'll be there, he said. I don't know who else will, but I'll be there. Thank you, I whispered. When he flew into Portland, lankier but broader somehow, grown up, we hugged like people who'd survived a war together but fought on different fronts. On the morning of my wedding, I stood in a simple white dress, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked content. That was new. You ready? Carmen asked, peeking in. She was my maid of honor, obvious. I think so, I said. Is my eyeliner okay? Gorgeous, she said. Also waterproof? Learned that lesson at graduation. I joked weakly. We both laughed. Then she squeezed my shoulders. You know you're allowed to grieve and be joyful on the same day, right? I know, I said, and I did. Somewhere deep down, I was mourning the imaginary mother who would have zipped up my dress and cried happy tears. The dad who would have walked me down the aisle and whispered, I'm so proud of you, kiddo. The siblings who would have given embarrassing toasts. But out there, under an arch of eucalyptus and fairy lights, were the people who had actually shown up. Carmen, Jess, who'd flown in with her mom, the woman who'd cheered for me in the arena, my coworkers, my viewers turned friends, who'd come from Seattle and Vancouver and Boise, with hugs and homemade gifts. And Tyler, he stood at the back of the little outdoor venue, in a borrowed suit, eyes shining. He'd offered to walk me down the aisle when I told him I wasn't having my father there. "I'm not trying to take his place," he'd said, "but I would be honored to take that walk with you. Only if you're okay with maybe both of us ugly crying," I'd replied. We did ugly cry as soon as the music started and everyone stood and turned. My knees went shaky. Tyler leaned in and whispered, "You made it, Mal." "Yeah," I whispered back. "I did." Halfway down the aisle, I caught Marcus's eyes. I swear, the way he looked at me should have been illegal. Like I was the only person in the world. Like he was watching his favorite movie and it had the best ending. In that moment, any lingering doubt about my choices evaporated. If I had stayed, if I had swallowed my hurt, if I had gone back to being Dorene and let them guilt me into every holiday, every obligation, I would never have found this. This man, this community, this self. During the reception, we did silly dances and ate good food and laughed until my cheeks hurt. At one point, Jess's mom pulled me into a hug and said, "I feel like I've watched you grow up twice now. The first time in that arena, the second time on YouTube. Thank you for being in the crowd both times," I said, and we both teared up. When it was time for speeches, Carmen roasted me lovingly for my teenage email address and my inability to not turn every minor inconvenience into a story. Marcus's speech made everyone cry. Then Tyler stood up, holding a piece of paper that was clearly too crumpled to be just crumpled. "I didn't write this for today," he said, voice trembling. "I wrote it a year ago and never sent it, but it feels right to say it now." He looked at me. "Dear Mallory," he read, "you were always the canary in our coal mine. You got sick from the poison first because you were paying attention. I'm sorry I kept singing along with everyone else instead of flying out with you. I see now that you weren't abandoning us. You were saving yourself. Thank you for showing me there's air outside that mine. We were wrecked. Everyone. Even the caterer. After the wedding, life didn't suddenly become a Hallmark movie. My mother didn't have a come to Jesus moment. My dad didn't show up with a bouquet begging forgiveness. Madison didn't DM me an apology. But small shifts happened. Tyler started therapy. He stopped rolling his eyes when I used words like boundary and gaslighting and started bringing them up himself. "Mom tried to guilt me into staying for Thanksgiving," he told me one year. I told her I'd rather spend it with friends than with people who don't like who I really am. She said I sounded like you. I said, "Thank you." Madison became a teacher, according to Tyler. "She's actually good with kids," he said once. I think some of the stuff she says to them is kinder than anything we heard. As for my parents, they mellowed with age, or exhaustion, or maybe just the realization that their usual tactics didn't work on distant grown children. My mother sent a card when my book came out. It said, "Congratulations on your project, Mom." There was a $50 check inside, with "for coffee" in the memo line. I cashed it. I bought coffee. I toasted my messy lineage silently. Then went back to filming a video about can you maintain low contact with a parent who refuses to apologize. 7 years after I walked off that stage under the arena lights, my life looks nothing like the one my parents imagined for me. It's brighter, louder, kinder. I run Revenge Diary as a full-blown platform now. YouTube, a podcast, live events. We started a mentorship program for first gen grads. We expanded the First Flight Fund into a registered nonprofit. We've helped over 100 women put down deposits on tiny studios or rooms in shared houses in new cities where their families' voices can't reach them quite as loudly. Some of them have become my close friends. One of them, a girl named Shanice from Baltimore, called me after her own graduation, sobbing. My mom didn't show up, she said, but my roommates were there, my boyfriend, my mentor. And I looked up and realized, this is my family now. I get to pick them. I told her, yeah, you do. Marcus and I have 2 kids now, a little girl who loves dinosaurs and a boy who insists on wearing superhero capes to the grocery store. We make a point of going to every little thing they care about, not in a suffocating way. I refuse to become the other extreme, but in a way that says, we see you. You matter to us. Even if this is just the preschool art show with 12 identical hand turkeys. Sometimes sitting in a tiny folding chair that my butt is absolutely too old for. Watching my daughter point proudly at 3 lines of scribble labeled, "My family," I get this lump in my throat. I lean over to Marcus and whisper, "Do you think she'll ever make a YouTube channel about how weird we are?" He grins. "Probably. I just hope it's about how we clap too loud." If you've made it this far into my ramble, you probably see bits of yourself in my story. Maybe your version wasn't a graduation. Maybe it was a wedding or a hospital stay or a promotion party or just one tiny moment you needed them and they chose something or someone else. I wish I could reach through the screen right now, hand you a tissue and a cup of tea, and tell you, face to face, you are not crazy for hurting. You are not disloyal for setting boundaries. You are not ungrateful for wanting more than the bare minimum. Sometimes, the most radical revenge you can take on people who tried to shrink you is to refuse to stay small, to change your name if you need to move across the country if that's what it takes, to build a life so full of genuine love, respect, and celebration that their absence feels less like a wound and more like making room for chosen family. For friends who show up with balloons and post-its and casseroles. For partners who would have sat in the front row with embarrassing posters. For children you can raise with the kind of steady, gentle love you deserved. So, have you ever had to distance yourself from toxic family to protect your own sanity? Have you ever stood in a metaphorical arena, looking at an empty row of seats that should have been full? How did you find the courage to walk away or the strength to stay and draw a line? I would truly love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments if you feel safe doing that. You never know who else might read your words and feel a little less alone. And if my journey, from Dorene in that empty row to Mallory sitting here in Portland, talking to you, hit something deep for you, please go ahead and like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And subscribe to Revenge Diary so you don't miss future stories. This little corner of the internet has become a kind of chosen family for so many of us. Every time you comment, every time you share, you help another person find their way here, out of their own burning house. Thank you for listening to mine. Thank you for letting me turn my heartbreak into something that maybe makes your load a tiny bit lighter. You are worthy of showing up for. You are worthy of front row seats and loud cheers and quiet, steady support. Please don't ever let anyone, blood or not, convince you otherwise.